The person who made the decision to create distance from you. The one who stepped back because the connection between you started moving into a place that felt too intense and completely beyond their comfort zone, is now entering a silent and confusing stage of deep reflection. Some connections in life do not arrive with dramatic moments, obvious signs, or unforgettable declarations. They appear quietly, almost unnoticed, slowly moving beneath ordinary thoughts until one day they realize those feelings have completely changed the way they see everything. Before either person fully understands what is happening, something inside has already shifted, and a powerful emotional attachment has started forming in a way that cannot easily be undone. This is the type of connection people often try to escape from. Not because it has no value, not because it means nothing, but because it feels too powerful, too consuming, and far too difficult to control. For a long time, maybe months or even years, this person convinced themselves that leaving you behind was the smartest choice. They told themselves that creating space was the only way to handle the overwhelming emotions they were carrying. They repeated the same explanations again and again, believing that walking away was the responsible decision, the practical decision, and the only option that would protect their routine, their reputation, and the carefully structured life they had created. But while they were creating plans, building emotional walls, and trying to convince themselves that distance was the answer, they overlooked something incredibly important. They misunderstood the true nature of the connection. They believed that moving away would make the feelings disappear. They believed that less contact would make everything easier. But the opposite happened. The more they tried to escape, the more they became aware of what they were trying to leave behind. Every attempt to create separation only gave the connection more space to grow stronger, deeper, and harder to ignore. And now something has changed inside them. A quiet transformation has taken place. They feel unsettled, they feel curious, they feel drawn towards something they once tried so hard to avoid. This is where the truth begins to reveal itself. Stay with me, because what happens next is something many people never understand. Let us focus on one important reality. They did not create distance because you had no meaning in their life. That painful belief is often the first thing people tell themselves when someone pulls away, but it is not always the truth. It creates a wound that makes you question your own importance when you should be looking deeper into what was actually happening. People rarely walk away from something that feels completely empty. They usually walk away from situations that challenge them, overwhelm them, or force them to confront parts of themselves they have avoided for a long time. They step away from things that threaten the balance they have worked so hard to maintain. They distance themselves from experiences that challenge their beliefs, their comfort, and the version of themselves they have spent years protecting. This connection with you was never ordinary. It was never something they could easily label, control, or place into a simple category. It did not follow the usual patterns. It did not wait for approval. It existed in a space that felt unpredictable and unfamiliar. And for someone who built their life around control, stability, and certainty, that kind of emotional experience can feel frightening. Now they are being forced to face the exact reality they tried to escape. The space they created did not erase the feelings. The silence they chose did not remove the memories. The walls they built did not destroy the connection. Instead, that distance created a place where thoughts became louder, memories became clearer, and emotions they had buried started rising again. The more they tried to convince themselves that leaving was the right decision, the more they began noticing the truth they had been avoiding. They were not running away from something meaningless. They were running away from something that had reached a place inside them they could no longer ignore. And now, for the first time, they are beginning to understand what they were truly afraid of. They see you in a completely different way now, not simply as someone they feel naturally connected to, but as someone who has deeply transformed the way they understand their own emotions. You are no longer just a person they remember. You have become someone who changed the entire landscape of their inner world. What they feel at this moment is intense, honest, and impossible to completely explain through simple logic or reason. Even with this awareness growing inside them, they may still try to resist it. They may feel caught between the undeniable strength of what they are experiencing and the fear of stepping beyond the emotional boundaries they have spent so much time creating. The truth is, some connections cannot be controlled, calculated, or easily placed into a simple explanation. They exist in the quietest parts of the mind and heart, appearing during unexpected moments, returning during silence, and asking to be acknowledged. This is exactly why it feels so overwhelming for them. It is not something they can simply turn off. It continues to exist beneath the surface, waiting for them to finally stop running from it. And when they eventually face what they truly feel, the realization becomes impossible to avoid. You are not someone they can simply erase from their memory. You are not a temporary chapter that can be closed without emotion. You are not someone they can leave behind and never think about again. Your presence created a lasting impact that changed something within them. It is a truth they may have tried to hide, but it continues to reveal itself. This connection did not disappear when distance was created. Instead, it became even more noticeable. It did not fit perfectly into their future plans, personal beliefs, current circumstances, or the responsibilities they carried every day. Every attempt they made to understand it through rules and expectations failed because what they felt did not follow the normal patterns they were used to. Instead of becoming weaker with time apart, the connection continued becoming stronger in quiet and unexpected ways. The more they tried to push it away, the more they noticed how different they felt when they were around you. Their usual emotional defenses started becoming weaker without them even realizing it. Stay with me, because this is where the hidden truth begins to become clear. Old conversations began returning to their mind again and again. Small moments that seemed ordinary at the time started carrying a completely different meaning. Even the silence between you felt memorable, almost as if those quiet moments were saying more than words ever could. The simplicity of your presence touched a part of them they had kept hidden for a long time. That feeling scared them because it forced them to recognize emotions they were not prepared to confront. It created a conflict inside them. A part of them wanted to move closer, while another part desperately wanted to protect the life and identity they had built. Eventually, they believed they had to make a choice. They chose distance, but it was not because they felt nothing. It was not because they stopped caring. It was because the connection became much stronger than they expected, and they did not know how to handle its intensity. Being close to you felt like stepping into an unfamiliar emotional space where their usual methods of control no longer worked. The connection felt difficult, not because it was wrong, but because it challenged everything they believed they could manage. The timing seemed complicated. Their emotional availability may not have matched the depth of the situation. Their responsibilities, family expectations, personal commitments, or fear of change created pressure that made everything feel harder. Accepting the connection fully would require them to face truths about themselves they had spent years avoiding. Whenever they were near you, they felt seen in a way that was both comforting and frightening. It was as if the hidden parts of their personality were becoming visible without them having to explain anything. And what made it even more powerful was that you never had to force it. You never needed to chase, pressure, or demand anything from them. Your natural presence alone created an emotional reaction they could not easily control. Your honesty and authenticity challenged the protective walls they had carefully built over time. They began to realize that allowing this connection to continue could require changes they were not ready to make. Their habits, routines, comfort zones, and carefully organized life could all be affected if they accepted what they truly felt. So they chose the easier path. They stepped away. They used distance as a way to regain control over emotions that felt too unpredictable. They convinced themselves that they were making the logical decision. They told themselves they needed time, that circumstances were difficult, and that staying away was necessary. But those explanations were often a way to avoid facing the vulnerability that came with being truly close to you. The interesting thing about trying to escape a powerful connection is that resistance does not always destroy it. Sometimes resistance makes a person notice it even more. The harder they tried to control their feelings, the more clearly those feelings revealed themselves. They started remembering details they once considered small. A certain expression on your face, the warmth in your voice, the way you made ordinary moments feel meaningful. These memories stayed longer than expected. They became reminders of something they had tried to ignore. Every attempt to create emotional distance only showed them how significant your presence had become. They found themselves caught between curiosity, longing, and uncertainty. The connection remained quiet, but it also became impossible to deny. Now they are facing the results of the choices they made. In the silence after creating distance, they are beginning to hear everything they tried to ignore. The life they built for protection starts feeling smaller, while the memory of what they shared with you feels stronger. They are beginning to understand that you were never just a passing interest or a temporary distraction. You represented something deeper. You awakened emotions and thoughts they had forgotten existed. The silence they once wanted now carries the weight of unanswered questions and unfinished feelings. Whenever they try to continue forward, their mind often returns to the moments when they felt understood and connected with you. They are slowly realizing that some experiences cannot be managed like a simple problem. Some emotions cannot be organized into perfect categories. Some connections force people to grow because they reveal parts of themselves they never knew existed. This realization is difficult because it makes them question whether they chose comfort over something meaningful. They are beginning to see that the walls they created to protect themselves may also have become the walls preventing them from experiencing deeper emotional fulfillment. A quiet regret begins forming inside them. Not only regret about losing closeness, but regret about spending so much energy trying to escape something that continued finding its way back into their thoughts. They are starting to understand that you were never a problem they needed to solve. You were a reflection of emotions they were afraid to acknowledge. This is not just a passing feeling, it is a change in the way they see things. They cannot completely return to who they were before meeting you because certain experiences leave a permanent impression. The connection left a mark that time and distance cannot easily remove. They are learning that courage is not always found in avoiding uncomfortable emotions. Sometimes courage is found in accepting the things that challenge us and reveal our deepest truths. And although they may still hesitate, although they may still keep some distance, something inside them is changing. The truth is becoming louder. The feelings they tried to bury are slowly coming back to the surface. You have become a reference point for what feels genuine and meaningful. Even when they are surrounded by other people, they may notice that something feels different. They may search for the same sense of understanding and connection they experienced with you. It becomes a quiet reminder of what they once felt, a reminder created by their own choice to walk away. They are beginning to realize that while they were trying to protect the life they knew, they may have also moved away from something that made them feel truly alive. And now that realization is breaking through the defenses they spent so much time building. The truth they avoided is becoming impossible to ignore. There is something deeply powerful about the fact that even with distance, silence, and time standing between you, the connection still feels alive. It is like a small flame that has been protected from the wind, struggling in the darkness but refusing to disappear. It continues burning quietly, waiting for the moment when they become brave enough to admit what they have been trying not to see. Their life feels different without the emotional connection they once believed was too overwhelming to accept. You were never simply a temporary moment that they could leave behind, forget, and place somewhere in the past. You became connected to a deeper part of their journey, and as they spend more time reflecting on this truth, they are slowly understanding that some bonds cannot be erased through distance, silence, or time. A connection created through genuine emotion does not disappear just because someone chooses to step away. It remains, it waits. It continues to exist beneath everything they tried to build on top of it. Now, they are standing in front of a completely different understanding of themselves. They are facing a choice between continuing to hide behind old fears or finally accepting the truth they have been avoiding. The decision is still theirs to make, but something inside them already knows the answer. Their heart understood it long before their mind was ready to accept it. They are only now beginning to recognize what they have felt all along. You are not someone unfamiliar to them. You are not an error they need to correct. You are not simply a decision they can reverse as if nothing ever happened. You represent a truth they have tried to avoid, but one that continues finding its way back into their awareness. They believed that creating distance would slowly reduce the emotional attachment. They thought time apart would restore their sense of control, calm the intensity, and allow them to move forward without looking back. They convinced themselves that removing themselves from your presence, staying away from your world, and ignoring what they felt would bring stability back into their carefully organized life. But something happened that they never expected. The more they tried to escape the connection, the more strongly it appeared in their private thoughts. The harder they pushed away, the more memories returned. Small moments, simple conversations, and emotions they thought they had buried began appearing again with surprising strength. Even during times when they expected to feel peaceful and free, your presence remained in their thoughts like a quiet reminder of something unfinished. They discovered that avoiding the connection did not remove its impact. Instead, it made them more aware of how much it had affected them. Without warning, reminders of you began appearing everywhere. A song that suddenly brought back a forgotten emotion. A quiet evening that made them remember a conversation you shared. A simple, everyday moment that unexpectedly carried the feeling of your presence. Things they once considered ordinary started feeling meaningful because they were connected to memories they could not fully release. The strategy they believed would protect them began revealing the opposite truth. Avoidance was not giving them peace. It was forcing them to recognize what they had been trying to deny. And this is where the deeper realization began. Stay with me, because this is the moment when everything starts changing. They slowly began understanding that the real loss was not only about losing closeness with you. It was about losing touch with a part of themselves that felt more alive when you were present. Every attempt to silence their emotions created a stronger distance from their own truth. Every effort to convince themselves that they did not care only made them more aware of how much they actually did. This realization did not arrive suddenly like a dramatic moment from a movie. It developed slowly. It appeared in quiet mornings, in lonely nights, in unexpected pauses during ordinary days. It showed itself through a feeling they could not explain, a sense that something important was missing even when everything around them seemed normal. They started noticing that certain things no longer felt the same. Relationships that once felt satisfying began feeling incomplete. Achievements they once celebrated did not create the same happiness they expected. The outside world looked the same, but something inside them had changed. Slowly, they began asking the questions they had avoided for so long. Why does everything feel different now? Why does their mind continue returning to you? Why do moments without you feel quieter, emptier, and less meaningful than before? These questions became impossible to ignore because the answers were already forming inside them. They started realizing that you were never simply a distraction from their normal life. You were not something that interrupted their peace. Instead, your presence awakened emotions and thoughts they had forgotten how to access. You brought attention to parts of themselves they had kept hidden. You showed them feelings they were not prepared to confront. What they once considered a complication slowly began revealing itself as something much deeper. They began understanding that the connection was not about escaping reality. It was about finally seeing reality more clearly. You were never just a passing temptation or a temporary experience they needed to overcome. You represented something meaningful that challenged them to look inward and question the choices they had made. The distance they created was supposed to help them forget, but instead it gave them more time to remember. The silence they chose was supposed to make things easier, but instead it made the unanswered emotions louder. They are beginning to understand that some people enter our lives not because everything is simple, but because they reveal something important that was always waiting to be discovered. You became a reflection of emotions they did not know they were capable of feeling, a reminder of a deeper connection they had been searching for without realizing it. And now they are standing at the point where they can no longer pretend that nothing changed. The truth has become too clear. The feelings they tried to bury have continued growing beneath the surface. What they once viewed as something they needed to escape is now something they are beginning to understand. You were never just a moment they experienced. You became a turning point they cannot forget. You became a mirror that revealed a part of themselves they had never fully known, and that realization is changing the way they see everything. That showed them a version of themselves that felt truly awake, deeply authentic, and emotionally connected. Around you, the protective walls they had carefully built over many years started breaking apart like fragile barriers against a powerful wave. They are beginning to understand that leaving you was not actually an act of careful thinking or emotional maturity. Instead, it became a quiet moment of disconnecting from themselves. While they were trying to escape the connection, they were also moving away from the very version of themselves they secretly wanted to become. The version that felt genuine, open, present, and capable of experiencing a deeper level of connection was something your presence naturally brought forward. And now that they are finally willing to face this truth, the reflection you revealed to them has become impossible to ignore, impossible to erase, and impossible to forget. The realization does not arrive like a sudden explosion. It comes slowly, like the first light of morning appearing after a long and difficult night. They are now seeing the results of the choices they made. The distance they believed would keep them safe did not truly protect them. It only delayed the moment when they would have to face what was always waiting beneath the surface. They are realizing that avoidance was never a solution. It was simply a way of postponing a truth that eventually demanded attention. And this understanding is both painful and deeply meaningful. In this quiet realization, they begin to see that you were never someone they needed to fear. You were never someone they needed to fight against. You were someone who revealed parts of themselves they had been afraid to acknowledge. Stay with me, because this is where the deepest realization begins to unfold. They finally understand why your presence felt so different from anything they had experienced before. They understand why conversations with you stayed in their mind long after they ended. They understand why certain moments continued replaying in their thoughts and why no other connection seemed to create the same emotional impact. The intensity was not created only because circumstances were complicated. The intensity existed because something about this connection touched a place they had kept hidden for a long time. It reached beyond the limits they had created for themselves. It challenged the comfortable boundaries they depended on because it invited them to experience life and emotion in a more honest way. And now, during quiet moments, they carry feelings they do not always know how to explain. Not dramatic emotions that demand attention, but a calm and persistent awareness that remains in the background of their life. Not overwhelming obsession, but a quiet sense of reflection and regret. They may feel regret for creating distance, curiosity about where life has taken you, and a fear that they waited too long. At the same time, there is a small hope that the connection has not completely disappeared. But beyond everything else, there is respect. They recognize the way you handled the situation. They notice the patience you showed, the dignity you maintained, and the fact that you did not chase them, pressure them, or lose yourself trying to hold on. Your ability to allow space without becoming bitter created a lasting impression. This is the part of them that understands they encountered something rare, something emotionally mature, something steady and powerful. Your presence changed the way they view connection, respect, and personal growth. They are beginning to understand that what they experienced with you was not ordinary. It was something that challenged them to become more aware of themselves. But why is this realization happening now after so much time has passed? Deep realizations rarely appear when life is full of noise and constant distraction. They usually arrive during moments of stillness. They appear when the outside world becomes quieter and there is finally room to hear what has been buried inside. Something in their life may have shifted, something may have slowed down, disappointed them, or forced them to look inward. A situation they could not avoid may have created a moment of reflection, and during that silence, the memory of this connection returned with a clarity they could no longer dismiss. They started seeing what they once refused to accept. They did not step away because the connection had no value. They stepped away because it felt real, and real emotions can be frightening when someone is not prepared to face them. Once a person truly recognizes something meaningful, they cannot easily pretend they never saw it. They cannot completely return to the mindset they had before. And here is the most important truth for you. You did not lose what was meant for you. What happened created growth. You moved beyond the version of them that was controlled by fear, uncertainty, and hesitation. Whether they choose to reconnect or continue remaining silent, the experience has already changed something within them.